Unfortunately, there's not really a whole lot to sink your teeth into in terms of what the Twins did today. They did make one move. They were literally the last team across all of baseball to make a trade. And it was, probably in the bottom handful in terms of wattage. So the Twins make one trade. It was one of the most minor trades of the entire day. They acquire Trevor Richards from the Blue Jays for Jair. I do think Trevor Richards fits nicely into the Twins bullpen picture. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a sec. Jair, a guy who was in my Twins top... He was definitely in my top 50. He might have been in my top 40. He might have been 40th at one point earlier this season. It's been kind of a tough go for him. He dropped out of my top 50 in June. And, with this incoming draft class, there wasn't going to be room for him to really re-enter based on what he's done. So this is a really, the Twins aren't going to miss Jair. I mean, sorry, Jair. But wishing you the best of luck in your future endeavors. But this was a very easy prospect to let go for a guy who should help the big club. So that's a good thing that they got Trevor Richards. Josh Staumont was the guy who was DFA'd to make room on the 40-man for Trevor Richards. I was a little bit surprised by that because Staumont, he has an option. So they could have kept him on the 40-man, and even if they didn't feel like he was good enough to stay on the active roster, they could have sent him to St. Paul, kind of helped him tinker with some more stuff. Maybe he hasn't been pitching well. He's been pitching very poorly of late. Maybe he doesn't get claimed. And I was thinking about this too. Like if the Twins were in a position to claim Josh Staumont, I don't think they would. A lot of these bad teams aren't going to be looking to claim. They'd rather throw some innings at a prospect than claim Josh Staumont. Now, some of these teams that traded, I don't know how many guys Miami traded. So maybe that's part of Miami's strategy was like, hey, let's just claim all the guys that are going to get DFA'd after the deadline. I don't know. So it could be a deal like that. But I think there's probably a chance that he sticks around. I don't know. But this isn't a huge improvement. The Twins aren't expecting that much from Trevor Richards. The reason why I say he fits in nicely is he has reverse platoon splits. So the Twins, I was mainly focusing on left-handed relievers when I was talking about guys they might target. This guy isn't a left-handed reliever, but he will help you out quite a bit against left-handed hitters. That's his career platoon splits up top there, so much better against lefties and righties because he is such an extreme changeup guy. 57% of the pitches he throws are changeups. That is insane. It's a good-looking pitch, too. I get why he has leaned this much into the changeup. So he's a specialist. You can really think of him that way. He's going to face lefties. I don't think the Twins want him pitching in high leverage late in games. But, depending on what parts of lineups are coming up, he might get some, and who's pitched and all that, and he might get some looks in some higher leverage stuff if, Okert and Thielbar continue to struggle, especially. So, what you're getting, what skill you're hoping he brings, and that's a guy who can get lefties out. As far as the rest of the competition in the AL Central goes, the Guardians nobody really went crazy and went all in and got, nobody locked anything up today. And even teams that have great deadlines, it doesn't always guarantee success at all. But I do like what the Guardians did. Lane Thomas, you might look at his overall numbers and kind of not think there's much there, but he kills lefties. He's a great platoon guy. I've kind of, I think maybe last deadline, I talked about him as a Twins target. And then Alex Cobb, who hasn't pitched in the majors yet this year, but he's been on some rehab assignment starts. A guy who's been pretty solid starter for quite a while. Just kind of hasn't always been able to stay healthy. I would have liked both those additions for the Twins, but at the same time, it's not like the Guardians pushed themselves out of reach with these two moves. I think they had a nice solid deadline, but didn't really, again, I don't think they're much more scary than they were before. The Royals were more active, but I think, and I think they've got to give them credit for addressing a lot of soft spots, we'll put it that way, and kind of shoring things up. Michael Lorenzen isn't that good. Paul DeYoung isn't that good. Hunter Harvey and Lucas Ursig are much better, but you're talking about two right-handed relievers. That's going to help, obviously. Any improvements are going to help. Any kind of depth, too, is going to help. That's kind of the thing about the Twins. When I think about the Twins and things they could have done is just kind of extending things out a little bit further and insulating yourself in case of injuries. There's some things I think the Twins could have done there that would have been good. But the Royals, again, credit for the Royals. They deserve credit for really the last 12 months of being really the most active AL Central team and trying to get better. And that rings true, I think, still here in terms of the number of additions that they made, I suppose. But so, that's what happened in the division. The Twins made by far the fewest additions. These are my takeaways. Well, I'll kind of expand on these. Nobody should be satisfied. Nobody should be sitting here feeling good that all of the Twins did was add Trevor Richards. So I want to kind of lead with that and put that front and focus because I am going to kind of offer up some more positivity than that. But I also think the Twins as an organization are pretty tone deaf. I think they are at this point. They didn't do anything last deadline. They cut payroll this offseason. They didn't do anything at this deadline. Somehow they still expected to get a boost in attendance when anybody who paid attention at all to the overall tone of the fan base and just vibes around the team knew that them cutting payroll totally killed any momentum that they gained by beating the streak. Is that appropriate? Is that fair? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if the Twins feel like, oh, we beat the playoff streak, we won a series, the fans should be, we're a competitive team in a playoff race. Fans should be showing up. They're not. So what are you going to do to get them back? Is it weird to take this stance of the not looking at the trade deadline from a purely baseball standpoint? Maybe, but I think this was, from a marketing standpoint, an opportunity to get some people on board, to get some people excited. And it was just kind of another opportunity for people to point at the Twins and being like, see, they're not in it to win it. And as someone who believes in this team, and believes that if the chips fall together, they could go to the World Series. I honestly believe that. Call me crazy. It's hard to fault anybody who sort of stops there and just says, oh, they're not a serious team. And some people are just going to kind of take the stance of that's how I'm going to think about them until they can show me otherwise. And third point, that being said, it is complicated. It's complicated. It's not as easy as that. And we don't have all of the info. Now, I know Derek Falvey has said already in post-deadline interviews that they weren't limited financially. Of course he's going to say that. What do you think Derek Falvey's going to say? You think this guy wants to get in? He's going to throw his bosses under the bus and be like, yeah, we didn't do anything because we didn't have any money. No, Derek Falvey's not going to say that. So, just because he said that, I don't think means that we know that. I actually don't believe him at all. Now, if he came out and said, we had some guys we targeted that we really liked, but the asking prices, we got a little sticker shock on the asking prices, I would believe that because Yusei Kikuchi was a guy I thought they'd be in on. There was some smoke there too, and what Houston gave up to get him, I wouldn't have given up. So I think they have kind of an out there. So I think it's really complicated. I think it's more complicated than just the Twins were cheap and they didn't get anybody. I do think even if the Twins had $10, $15 million of spending space, I'm not sure that they would have still gone out and got some of these guys anyway. So that sounds like I'm defending them not making moves, but we'll just go back up to the top and just say again, nobody should be satisfied with what's happened. But that is sort of a piece that I think should be taken into account. Some of the guys that were traded in the division, out of the division, that's one thing that Falvey commented on that I believe him on, that they had asked about those guys, but what the Tigers or the White Sox were asking from the Twins was actually quite a bit higher than what they got from whatever team they ended up trading them to. They were asking more to send a player inside the division than they were outside the division. I believe that. So there were some things working against them. That doesn't make me feel much better. I'll put it that way. And this kind of is why I thought it'd be good for them to push some chips in and maybe be willing to move some prospects, as the current foundation is very sustainable. If you want to be positive about anything about this team right now, it's that it looks like they have a great foundation for years to come. Most of this roster is going to be in place for the next season, 2 seasons, 3 seasons, even beyond that. And then obviously the system has taken a pretty good step forward. There's a lot of guys in the high minors that are going to be knocking on the door soon. So I think overall this organization is in really good shape. Yes, it did take a lot of prospect capital to acquire some of these guys, but the Twins are kind of in a good spot to have given up some prospect capital. And that being said, there wasn't a single top 100 prospect traded. So it's not like anybody had to give up their tippy-top prospects. They had to kind of bundle multiple guys, maybe their top 10, top 20, whatever. But nobody had to give up a single top 100 prospect. Not a single top 100 prospect was traded. Some of these other teams that were maybe more aggressive don't have as positive of a future outlook. I do think, obviously on this channel, that we pay attention to the minor leagues on a daily basis. Of course I like watching the homegrown guys. And it's super fun to see like a Brooks Lee come all the way from being drafted in the first round, working his way through the system, breaking into the big leagues. That's awesome. So, I'm not like bummed that all of these guys that I've been following their whole careers are sticking around. And trades don't always work out. So I think most people are upset, but I do know there's people who comment on the channel here that were saying, I don't want them to do anything. And are really, in my opinion, kind of hung up on what happened in 2022 when the Twins traded for guys and got really nothing. They've done that in previous years too. They've had some trades that didn't work out well either. But 2022 really stands out. My kind of defense in that is nobody they gave up in 2022 is really killing not having them. Would they be nice to have around? Absolutely. Are we really looking at Spencer Steer and thinking with this, how crowded the position player group is, that he would make some kind of a huge difference if they had kept him? No. We're not going to rehash all that. But my main point is, yes, that they gave up a good amount of prospects that year. Yes, the major leaguers they acquired all busted. Do we really look back on that deadline 2 years later and are just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe they would be so much further up in the standings if those guys were still around? No. Even though I like having a good system, that the system's strong, that it would have made sense to make some moves and try to improve this roster. But that's not what happened. And it's unsatisfying. Again, but I think, there were some reasons to not go down some of the paths that were out there. So I do think ownership was making things difficult. Maybe it didn't completely prevent the Twins from making any more moves, possibly. But, when you can't take on money, you're getting out of some of these conversations. Like if you're starting a trade conversation with like, hey, we're interested in this guy, but you would have to eat half of his contract or something. As that team you're talking to, okay, maybe from a value standpoint, you can keep that conversation going because you're going to ask for more prospects. But then why are you not going to just talk to another team that can eat that whole contract and make your owner happy? But again, that's sort of falling into it's complicated and we don't have all the info. Anyway, one last news item before we get into the actual games for this evening's. Kalen Culpepper did sign. It was the signing deadline tomorrow for draft picks, and he did sign. I think it was right around his bonus slot, so not really going over or under. I don't know if it was the exact slot number, but it was right around there. So Kalen Culpepper is officially signed as expected. So Walker Jenkins got called up to Cedar Rapids and made his debut. Unfortunately, this is as much as I have to share on that. Because there were problems with the broadcast on MILB TV. I don't know if it was just me, but this is what all I could get. 3 hours of this. This event will begin shortly. It never did, unfortunately. So this happens from time to time, but didn't have video, which was a shame. Not that Walker Jenkins did anything. Jenkins, he played center field. He was 0 for 3 with a strikeout and a hit by pitch. So he didn't do much. But Cedar Rapids came back from down 3-0 in the bottom of the ninth and won. 4-run bottom of the ninth inning. They walk it off. It was a Kevin Maitan 2-run homer. Misael Urbina hit a game-tying double and then scored the game-winning run and a Jose Salas walk-off single. So really crazy game. Too bad we don't have highlights of that one, but we do have some highlights. Ricardo Olivar. You mentioned Jenkins got called up. Olivar got called up from Cedar Rapids to Wichita. Debuted, played left field. Here he is getting his first hit to get the Wichita Wind Surge on the board in this one. They were actually no hit for a good long chunk of this game. They had a good ninth inning rally, but could not win. They lost 4-3. But Olivar wanted to show there getting a hit. In the Saints game, Jair Camargo hit a pair of home runs for the Saints as their DH. Did the Camargo shuffle, which we'll see from the bird's eye view here, and oh boy, they didn't like that. You could hear the boos coming through the broadcast. They did not appreciate that one. Patrick Winkel, who's been really hot in July, a 395 OBP, a 550 slugging for 945 OPS. He went deep. So here's Camargo's second homer in the eighth inning, opposite field. He's just so good at getting the ball in the air, man. Gets this one out, does the Camargo shuffle once again, and got booed even worse the second time. This guy's got aura, Jair Camargo. I get it. I get that the people aren't going to like to see that, in an opposing ballpark. I probably wouldn't either, to be honest. But when he does it basically every time, I think you can be cool with it, right? It's just a thing that he does. I don't know. Anyway, here's the starting pitching rundown from across the minor league system. Not really a whole lot of standouts. Travis Adams did pitch very well for the Wind Surge. He's been a little bit hit or miss, but some of his games have been really good. And this was one run over 6 innings for him. On the hitting side, again, Camargo went deep twice in that game. Jake Rucker had 2 of Wichita's 3 hits and scored their only run. So nice outing out of him. And Yasser Mercedes, he's off to a slow start up with the Mighty Muscles, but he did get a hit and stole a base today. On to the Twins game, it was bad. So not only did we have an unsatisfying deadline, we had a very dissatisfying Twins game here. Twins only collect 2 hits against Sean Manaea-led Mets staff and lose 2-0. Yuck. Brooks Lee got a hit and a walk. The Twins only had 2 hits. So he had one of the 2 hits and drew a walk. And he's been struggling of late. So that was good to see from him. Made a nice play at shortstop, too, to start a double play. David Festa pitched well. So, we weren't completely without positives from this one. David Festa only giving up 2 runs over 5 innings. Struck out 6. Threw a good amount of strikes. Only walked 1 guy. His last 2 outings have been so much better than the first 2. And I just wanted to highlight Jorge Alcala has been so good. I know tonight he's been better than tonight. A 30-pitch inning, that took a little bit of work, but was pretty nasty. He topped out at 100.1. He threw a 93-mile-per-hour slider. You see there down at the bottom, the baseball savant data, all of his stuff was a little bit up tonight. So he's looking hot. Again, just a frustrating way to stack onto a frustrating day for the Twins. They lose 2-0. Saints and Colonels win. Surge and Muscles lose. Thanks so much for checking this one out. Really appreciate it. We'll talk again soon.